Welcome to 5-4B, factoring polynomials. We are going to use all the methods that we had, from grouping to GCF to general trinomials to difference of squares, sum, and difference of cubes in order to divide polynomial fractions. Now I want to point out here that it says simplify, so those of you who are panicking because 5-3 is back again, it's not. We notice that the directions say simplify. It doesn't say long division, or does it say synthetic. We're going to factor. So study the directions, and then I'll show you the first step. You can see that I took the top trinomial, and that's x squared minus 2x minus 8. And since it's trinomial, and there's no GCF, I'm going to use what we call the AC method, the diamond method, something that we've learned in past videos. So there we go. Once again, the reason why it's called the AC method is because the one in front of the x squared is called A, and the last term is called C. We multiply those together, and then of course B, the negative 2, goes down at the bottom. And now we look for factors of 8. That means two numbers multiplied together to give me 8. And then we look for the sum. When we have two numbers and we add or subtract them together, give me negative 2. Alright, you can see that negative 4 times 2 is negative 8, and negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2. So this is going to begin my factoring. You can see I took the trinomial that was in the denominator. There is no GCF, so I'm going to go ahead and use the diamond factor, AC method. And of course I'm going to go A times C, and I get negative 14 on top. Take the B, which is negative 5, and now I'm going to look for factors of 14 that are two numbers multiplied together, and when I add them together give me negative 5. You can see 2 times negative 7 is negative 14, and if I combine 2 with negative 7, I get negative 5. So now I'm just going to have to go ahead and rewrite these as factors. You can see that I took my diamond, or my AC method, and I placed them properly into two sets of binomials. And red is the numerator and green is the denominator. Alright, and now we're only allowed to do this if we have binomials. And you can see right here quite clearly we have a couple of sets of binomials. We're looking for a binomial that's exactly the same as x minus 4 down in the denominator. I don't. Then I'm going to go to the next binomial, and I am looking for one of the denominator that's x plus 2, and I do find it, so I'm allowed to cancel these out. Alright, so what do I have left? Well, it's quite clear what I have left. It is x minus 4 and x minus 7. Now this is where I caution you, you stay right here, because you can't cancel out the x's, and you can't cancel out the 4 or the 7. The reason why is they're not monomials. Okay, all right. We can only do that without parentheses, and notice that they don't have parentheses. We can only cross out if they were in parentheses, like we did in this step. So that's our final answer. All right, you can see that in the next problem it does say simplify again, and when we simplify, we're not dividing. We're factoring. That's what 5-4b is about. So in my numerator, 2y squared plus 8y. It's a binomial, so we're not going to use the AC method, but I do notice that we can GCF. If you quite clearly see here that the 8 and the 2, we can take out by division the number 2. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to GCF out a 2. So here's my 2. And then if you look at again, we have a y and a y, and I'm going to GCF out a y, and that would be y to the first power. I'll still have a binomial. Now what we do is we're going to just say 2 divided by 2, and then y squared divided by y just gives me the number y. And then I'm going to do that again. There's my GCF, and go 8 divided by 2, that gives me a 4, and y divided by y cancels out. Alright, there's my numerator. Let's do my denominator. You can see in the denominator it's a binomial also, so we're not going to do the AC method or the diamond method. There is no GCF. One of the clues is A is equal to 1 here. So what are we going to do here? Well, we're looking for cubes or squares. Well, we can settle on squares because there's a square right here. All right, so we're going to square root that. So when I square root it, that just gives me y. When I have difference of squares, the pattern says I'll have two sets of parentheses. Next step, since I got to follow a pattern, since I square rooted this one, I got to square root this one. And that gives me 4. And the pattern says I just drop them off like that. Now, I got a negative sign here. And think of multiplication. What two signs do I need to maintain a negative? One needs to be positive and one needs to be negative. And that's a review of the difference of squares. Alright, you can see here that I have a unique situation. I have a monomial in the red being multiplied by a binomial. So I'm going to go ahead and focus in on the monomial, and I can only cancel out a monomial with a monomial, and the denominator doesn't have any. Inside the parentheses, those are binomials. Then I'll go to the next factor in the numerator, and that's y plus 4, and it's in parentheses. So I'm looking for another set of parentheses that have y plus 4, and I do. So I'm able to cancel those out. So now I'm going to go ahead and rewrite what's left, 2y and y minus 4. Notice I dropped the parentheses. Now, I can't cancel, just like I said before in the previous problem. I have a monomial on the top, but I still have a binomial on the bottom, and they're outside parentheses. So I can't cancel out the 2 with anything, and I can't cancel out the y. Think of it that there's a dog. Dogs don't play with cats because they're two different. One's a monomial and one's a binomial. All right, our next problem, you see x squared minus 25 is in the numerator. It's a binomial, so we're looking for difference of squares, or the sum of the difference of cubes. We're not going to GCF because there's a 1 in front of here. Alright, I notice that there's a square here, so it's going to be the difference of squares, not cubes. So I'm going to square root. And what is the square root of x squared? It's x. And I'm going to square root the 25, that gives me 5. The pattern says that when I have difference of squares, I have two sets of parentheses, and whatever I found, which was the x, gets put into both parentheses, and so does the 5. Now, how do I maintain this negative? Think 1 positive times a 1 negative number, and that will be a negative. That's your numerator. Alright, in green you can see the denominator. It's a trinomial, so we're going to use the diamond method. Notice that the a is 1, so there's no GCF. And I'm going to go ahead and write my diamond. I'm going to say 1 times 10, or I should say negative 10 is a negative 10. And of course I'm going to go ahead and put the b right here. And then I just find factors of 10. Two numbers multiplied together, when I add them together, give me positive 3. There you go. Alright, now what I'm going to do, well, we know that trinomials make two sets of binomials. We're going to go ahead and take the x squared and square root it, and we're going to take that answer and place them into both. Alright, next up is that we do have a negative 2 and a positive 5. We can just go ahead and place that there. And we're ready to reassemble. There you can see in red I reassembled the numerator and I reassembled the denominator into a fraction. I'm going to do what I'm going to cancel out if I can. And when I mean cancel out, I'm going to look for in the numerator, I'm looking for an x plus 5 inside a set of parentheses, which I have. And I'm going to double check, and I'm looking for in the denominator an x minus 5 instead of parentheses. I don't. So I'm going to go ahead and write out what I have left. Notice that the parentheses disappear, and I can't cancel because these are binomials that are not inside parentheses, so they got to stay the way they are. So there's the final answer. Alright, we're going to take the numerator, x squared minus 6x plus 8. Since 1, or the a is a 1, we do not need to GCF, so we just need to go a times c, which is 1 times 8, gives me 8. And we take the b, which is negative 6, and plop it right there in the bottom. We're looking for two numbers multiplied together that give me 8. 2 times 4. And, of course, I need a negative 6, so I need a negative 2 plus a negative 4 will give me a negative 6. And two negatives multiplied together will give me a positive 8. All right, I'm going to take this information and put it into the pattern. The pattern says take the first term, or the ax squared, square root it. Square root of an x squared is x. I go ahead and put it in the first two. And that negative 2 and that negative 4 I just figured out goes right there. All right, we're back to binomials. We don't have to GCF because the a right here is equal to 1, so there's no GCF. I'm not looking for squares. I'm looking for cubes. So we're going to have to use our calculator and find out what the cube root is. So we're going to break that out. The first thing is that we got to remember is the pattern says that the difference of cubes is not two sets of parentheses, but two sets of parentheses. One's a binomial and the other one's a trinomial. All right, the binomial is real simple. We'll just take the cube root, and we know that that cancels out and just gives us x. And then as we go ahead and find the cube root of 8, this is where the calculator comes into play. And drum roll, square root or cube root of 8 is 2 according to the calculator. And this is really easy if you memorize the pattern. If it's negative, then the binomial will have a negative in between the two. All right, now we're going to go ahead and take this x that we have here, and we're going to square it. And that will go right there. Let's keep the pattern going together. We're going to take the negative 2 and square it, and that gives me a 4. We'll put it in the back. Now we're going to take these two together and multiply them together. So what is x times negative 2? It is negative 2. And what we do here is that we're going to take the opposite of this sign, put a plus, and just put 2x. And then what's going to separate the 2x from 4? Just so you know, it's always, 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 always positive. So here's our answer. X minus 2 times the trinomial x squared plus 2x plus 4. All right, there it is. We divided polynomials by not using long division or synthetic division. We use factoring.